In platform engineering, we make developers' lives easier by building self-service internal developer portals and/or platforms. The difference between the two is a topic for another video. But for now, you may have watched some of my videos on Backstage. If you've been paying attention, you would have noticed how flexible Backstage is. But it requires lots of coding and is not that easy. Many of you have asked me if there's a simpler solution. Today, I want to introduce you to Port, which is an open internal developer portal that is much easier to work with. I have a series of 3 videos to give you a feel of the product. In this first video, we're going to set up Port with GitHub, PagerDuty, along with scorecards. So let's get started. All right, first thing to do is to go over to getport.io and let's get started. And let's put an email here. Okay. And a password. We'll just need to verify email. Okay. Now we have an onboarding that we can get started with. Organization. I'm going to skip inviting teammates. And then let's bring your services, pick your Git provider. We're going to go ahead and select GitHub and install the GitHub app. So I'm going to install it in this organization here. Fine. Installing that. Great. So we can go under Builder and Data Sources. And we already see our GitHub is connected. We got service. We got pull requests. Let's make this a bit bigger. And now let's jump in around here and see what we've got. So let's take a look at catalog, for example. And I got here production readiness and this idea of a scorecard dashboard. Scorecards are a way for you and your team to define and measure standards in different categories such as service maturity, production readiness, quality, productivity, and more. Scorecards contain rules that determine its overall score, such as bronze, silver, and gold. So we have a summary here. I have 122 repositories, and I got some basic. I've got bronze, I got silver, and you can see the number of repositories under each. So the level summary. And I have more here. You can see what each of these are. I think if I make this a little smaller, it might look better. So I've got bronze, basic, silver, 101 repositories under bronze. I can quickly see why it's categorized as bronze. These repos have a README, so that passed. Not a supported language, doesn't have a team, so the score is 33%. And then you got silver, you got basic, and so on. We'll touch more on scorecards later, but it's really nice to have this and at a glance see what repos or what services are under what level of production readiness. We've got a service dashboard here, which we'll probably take a look at later. I can see here a nice widget with services by language. So it looks at all my repos and gives me a nice pie chart with all the languages that I'm using across all my repos. Then we have our pull requests here, and I can see the identifier for each one of these pull requests. I can see the title of each request, pull request, whether they're part of a port team. Of course, there's nobody on the team yet. Last updated creator. We've got assignees, reviewers, status is open. These are all open pull requests. When they were last updated, merged. These links take us directly to that pull request. You can see here. And which service, in this case, a service is really a repository. A service can mean many things in Port. In our instance here, it is a repo. So very neat. This table already made up for us and created for us. We have services. And as I mentioned, in this context, services is really the repo. And we have 122. I got the title of each repo, a URL that takes me straight to the repo, which language is in this repo, mostly used, Slack, tier, production readiness shows up here as well. Very nice. It's a column in this table. I can I can sort this, I can hide it, I can do a few things here. And again, it shows me that it's whether it has a README file, whether it's a supported language, has a team, and the passcode. So that's amazing. Out of the box, there's quite a bit of visibility into what's going on with my GitHub repos. So that's pretty exciting. Next, let's take a look at Dependabot alerts, how we can pull these into port and also code scan alerts. So I'm going to be following this guide here, mapping repositories, Dependabot alerts, and code scan alerts. And what this is going to require us to do is work with some blueprints, which is great to understand what these are. And what we're going to do is we're going to create these or update these, if you will. We already have a service blueprint, which I'll show you in a minute. We're going to add a Dependabot alert blueprint and a code scan alert blueprint. And then we're going to use this port app config YAML file to get everything to work. So first thing, we need to go to Builder, and under Builder, under Data Model, this is what we've actually, the onboarding did for us. It created two blueprints, a pull request and a service. You can always create a blueprint from here. But really, what are blueprints? So let's expand this real quick. And you can see here the blueprint schema. So blueprint is the basic building block in port. It represents assets such as services, environments, or anything you want to manage. And after you define these blueprints, you can create entities based on them. So really think of it as really a schema of your data. So we're modeling the data here, as you can see. And here, for example, the service has a few properties: tier, README, language, Slack, URL. And these actually were visible to us. If we go back to the catalog under services, you can see the identifier, the title, the URL, Slack, the tier, all these properties were visible to us here. So let's go back to Builder. In addition to that, you can define actions, which is incredible. And it's going to be the topic of our second video, where we can actually, from port, we can go out and start a GitHub action, a Jenkins pipeline, a GitLab pipeline, and so on. And this is really neat because a few folks also asked me about Backstage, because in Backstage, out of the box, you can create GitHub actions, or you can push to GitHub actions and then get GitHub actions to fire. But there wasn't a native integration with Jenkins. And I looked into some of the Backstage plugins and I couldn't find one for Jenkins ready to go. So you'd have to code one to make it happen. So we have a bunch of actions here for this service. And if you go back to self-service, you'll see these are the actions that we just saw. So you can see things like creating a GitHub secret. You can see locking a service, unlock a service, deleting a repo, and so on. So all of those were defined in here in our actions. And then finally, the scorecards. Remember the scorecards, we talked about production readiness. These were also defined here. So for example, you can see that has README is defined here. And this is a JSON. So very simple JSON. We have an identifier, a description, a title, in this case, level bronze, and query we're looking for is not empty, and the property is README. So if we don't find a README file, then this is really, if we do find the README file, then this is level bronze. It passes the has README condition. Here's the use a supported language. So we have a bunch of supported languages here. You might have wondered what the supported languages were. And here's the definition: Python, JavaScript, React, and Golang. And has teams is another one as well. So you can always go into here and just click on edit JSON, and you can see the properties JSON, the actions JSON, and the scorecards JSON. So really what we want to do is just go back to the documentation and make sure we have a service blueprint, which we already do. So we don't really need to do anything here. So that one is good to go. We already have this service was ingested during onboarding, so that's fine. So then we gotta create a new blueprint here. And as per the documentation, let's create the new one called Dependabot alert blueprint. All we need to do is just copy the JSON here, and we can edit JSON. and copy and paste everything here. So notice it created this dependable alert, but notice that there is relationships between these blueprints. The pull request I didn't talk about, but there's a relationship here. And if you expand one of these, you can take a look again at the JSON. And at the very bottom of the properties, you can see that there is this idea of relationships. So relations, this is related to service. So there is the concept of relations between inside of our data model, which is great. So that's our first one. Let's go ahead and create the next blueprint. So let's copy that. New blueprint, add a JSON, save it. And here's another one, code scans, also is related to service. And then finally, this port app config.yaml, we're going to take that and we need to go into our data sources under GitHub. And these are exporters. So the GitHub exporter allows you to auto-discover GitHub objects and ingest them into your catalog. Map GitHub data into any blueprint using the following configuration file. So here's our configuration file. So you can see it right here. So you can see that we've got pull requests and we've got repository. So that's really where we're ingesting the repos and the pull requests. So let's go ahead and see here. We've got the repos once again. We got the dependabot alerts and code scanning alerts as well. I don't see the pull request, so I don't want to override what I already have. So let's go ahead and grab this. Okay, so we're leaving the repository. We're not taking that. That's fine. We already have it right here. We have the pull request right here. So at the very bottom, I'm going to paste code scanning alerts and dependabot alerts. So that's perfect. Let's save and resync that. Data ingested successfully. That looks great. Let's go back to our catalog. I already see code scan alerts show up here. I see dependabot alerts show here. Oh, there we go. I see dependabot alerts have already been populated. And what do we have here? We've got the identifier. So here's some of those here. I got a title, 14, 15, 16. Okay, that's fine. And if I click on it, I get more details. So I can see that the severity is medium, package name is cryptography, manifest path is pip file lock, and the CVE ID right here, state is open. Some related items or entities, cert lifecycle. So I can already see all of this inside of port, which is great because again, it's aggregating everything in one place. So if I have GitHub, I might have GitLab, I might have something else. So everything is seen from the portal point of view is great. So what else can we see here? I can see the severity, I can see the state, the package name, package ecosystem. I got some Ruby gems, pip, npm. What else can I see here? Manifest path, the scope, runtime, development, GHSA. Again, we're ingesting all this data from GitHub directly, the URL, and any references that we might have. And the service in this case is my repo again. So I can do something like group by any column. So if I want to group by, let's say, the service. So I'm now looking at each one of my repos and I can see this end-to-end infra app deployment, for example. I have all these dependabot issues and I think I just lost it here. Let's take a look at this one. I can see all these issues grouped by my particular service, in this case, the repo. So there's a lot of things we can do here from the UI. It's a very powerful UI. And let's see our code scan alerts. And here we go. We have a few already. Alert severity, title, PySQL injection. Again, it can take me directly to the security and the code scan here inside of the security, inside of GitHub if I want to. But of course, I can click on any one of these and I get more information. Alert description, SQL query built from user control sources. And the value, once again, is that we're ingesting everything in one place. So I can see all my code scan alerts in one place, my Dependabot alerts in one place. And once again, I can ingest this from other sources as well, such as GitLab, other version control systems. So it's very powerful to be able to get this view with just a few clicks, right? So there's a lot of work that's been done by the port team to integrate this. Now let's continue working on ensuring production readiness, and we're going to follow this guide here from port. And a few things we're going to do is we're going to update our services blueprint. And the goal really is to allow platform engineers to be able to define some policies for our service and automatically pass-fail releases accordingly. Developers, on the other hand, will be able to easily see which policies were set by the platform engineers that are not met and what they need to fix it. Also, R&D managers can get a bird's eye view of the state of all services in the organization. So really, that's what the goal of what we're trying to build here. And we're going to expand our services blueprint by doing a few things. We're going to add an on-call property to our service, and this is going to be fetched from PagerDuty. And we're also going to add a code owner's property in our service that's going to get fetched from GitHub. And we're going to do these in 3 steps. So first, add an on-call to our services by integrating with PagerDuty. Then we're going to display each service code's owners. And then finally, we're going to update our scorecard to reflect some of these rules. Let's start off by integrating PagerDuty. And do note that port does have integrations with other incident response platforms. We'll just use PagerDuty here in our demo. So you can go ahead and create a PagerDuty account. I already have one here. You can get one for free for 14-day trial. And we're going to create a new service. So under services, go ahead and create new service. We're going to call this one demo PD service. We're going to choose the default escalation policy here. Click next. We'll leave the intelligent alert grouping as is. And we're just going to leave this as is, create service without an integration at the bottom. This should get our first service in place. So if we go back to services, you should see the demo PD service there. Now let's integrate PagerDuty into port. And the integration already fetches the services and incidents directly. So we need to do that using a Helm chart. So we're going to need a Kubernetes cluster. I have one ready for us here. You can, of course, use Docker Desktop. I have my bare metal Kubernetes or K3s cluster here that I have in my home lab that we're going to use. Or this is what the Helm commands would look like. So first off, we need to use this Helm or add our Helm repo. Let's do that. And then we can run the Helm upgrade command, and this will install the integration for us. But before we do that, there are a few things that we need to work on. So we got to replace the client ID and client secret. This is for us to access the API for port. And then we also need to replace this token here to access the PagerDuty API. Okay, so let's go ahead and get these 2 secrets and we should continue. To get the PagerDuty token, just click over here and let's click on My Profile, User Settings, Create API User Token. Give it a description. We'll call it Port Integration. Create the token. All right, this becomes our token. It's only viewed once, so make sure we copy it in a safe place. So this is going to be our token. Now to get the port secret, a client ID and the client secret, go to credentials up here. And you can find the client ID and client secret here. Okay. All you need to do is just fill out these client ID and client secret and run the Helm upgrade command. I'm going to do it without you seeing my client ID and client secret, and we'll come back. Okay, we're back. If we run Helm ls, you can see here, let's make this bigger. We've got our PagerDuty integration. Let's check the status of our pods. We have the pod running here. Everything looks good. Now that the installation is complete, we see a few items show up here in the catalog: PagerDuty on-call schedule, PagerDuty incidents, schedules, services. So let's jump into our builder real quick, and we see already under our data model, we have PagerDuty on-call, PagerDuty incident, PagerDuty schedule, PagerDuty service, and we can see the relations that we have here. That looks great. Moving on, we need to add an on-call property to our service blueprint. To do that, first we need to create a relationship between our services and the PagerDuty services. So let's go back into our builder here, which we have, and click on our service. This is our service. Okay, and we're going to create a new relation down here. We'll title this PagerDuty service. And this will be targeting our PagerDuty service and limiting as one entity, and leave the required as false and click create. Now they're related. If you notice here, if we make this smaller, we see how our service is related to the PagerDuty service now. That's good. Now let's create a mirror property in our service to display its on-call. So once again, in our service, let's expand that. And under PagerDuty service, let's create a new mirror property. Call it on-call. And this is for our PagerDuty service. And we're mirroring the on-call property. Click create. Now we need to assign the relevant PagerDuty service to each of our services. And this can be done by adding some kind of mapping logic. So we got to go to a data sources page, and let's see how we're going to do that. So under data sources, go to PagerDuty integration, which is right here. We're going to go to the bottom of the file here, and then we're going to paste this, which is, again, I'm getting it from the documentation. And I think there's a problem with the indentation here. Let's indent that properly. Perfect. So you can see here this identifier, we're mapping the PagerDuty service to the relation between it and our services. So if our service identifier is equal to the PagerDuty services name, then the service will automatically have the on-call property filled out for it. So let's save and resync. Okay. Now let's go to our catalog and services. And notice now we have a new column called PagerDuty service that you can see here. And there's probably nothing that will show up here because we don't have PagerDuty service that has the exact same name as our service. So we can do this manually as well. So if this hello app here, I go in and decide to fill out that particular property, I can do that. So under PagerDuty service, I can edit this. And I can tie this to this particular PagerDuty service. So I can always do this manually. But what we're trying to do is tie in the same names for the services so we don't have to do this manually. So now if I go back here and I look at my PagerDuty service, I already see actually the default service, the demo PD service, and the Hello app are filled for me. And you can see that I've tied the demo PD service to that manually, to the Hello app manually, whereas the default service and demo PD service, these were actually tied directly with my service here, which is really nice. The other thing I want you to notice is the on-call now is also populated. So I can see my on-call from PagerDuty has been ingested in to port right here. If you go into PagerDuty, you can see the on-call shifts right here. We don't have a schedule yet, but you can see I'm the one that's on call because I'm the first user of PagerDuty. Excellent. Now let's move on and look at how we can display each service's code owners. And if you're not familiar with code owners in GitHub, basically GitHub allows you to have a file under the .github folder that you can call it code owners inside of a repo. In this file, you can specify who owns what pieces inside the repo. So in this case, I have Sam Gabrail is owning everything in this repo. You can, again, select certain folders, certain files that can be owned by certain people. And these code owners will get reflected inside of GitHub, and we're trying to pull that into port. So let's see how we can do that. So once again, we'll go into Builder. We'll choose the service blueprint, and we'll choose a new property. We'll call it code owners. Property type is a string. Required, we'll leave it as false. And description, we'll call it this services code owners. Give it an icon, leave the GitHub icon, and that should be good to go. Now we need to update the GitHub exporter to map and add the new property. So let's go to data sources. And let's go over here, click here. And under repository here, let's fill in this line. As a new property, code owners file is code owners. Save and resync. And now let's go back to our catalog. And for our services, we should be able to see the property code owners. Let's look for it. Here it is, code owners. And really, I haven't been using code owners because pretty much I'm the owner of all my code. But I do see here some code owners. Maybe this was a fork from some other repo, and that's why I can see somebody else as the code owner here. Now let's update our services scorecard. So let's go back to Builder, Services, and I already have it open. So let's go under Scorecards. Let's make this a bit bigger. And under the Production Readiness Scorecard, remember this, we can add more rules. So I'm going to select everything here and paste this. This is available from the documentation. So you'll see production readiness has README, has team, has Slack channel, has code owners that we just saw. So if it does, the level is silver. Operator is not empty. Code owners has on-call. This will be gold if you have an on-call as well. Let's save that. So now if we go to the catalog, click on services, you'll see the column, of course, that we saw before with all the production readiness here and the different levels of our scorecard. And if I click on any one of these services, you can see has a README, has passed, has a Slack channel, not passed, has on-call, not passed, has team, not passed, has code owners, not passed, and the production readiness in general is bronze with a pass scorecard rule of 20%. You can also view this under scorecards, and it gives you basic, bronze, silver, and gold. And a different view here, if we make this bigger, you can see has README, silver tier, and gold tier, what's required for each one of those tiers. And to me, this is amazing. You can see the flexibility that Port is offering in terms of production readiness and being able to put these rules in place that can tailor to different personas, like I said before, developers, platform engineers, R&D managers, and so on. Now that we're done with this guide, there are actually other possible daily routine integrations that I really like that they suggested here at the end of the tutorial. Using Port's API to check the scorecard compliance from your CI and pass-fail accordingly. Very cool. Notify periodically via Slack about services that fail the gold, silver, bronze validations. And then you can send a weekly, monthly report for your managers showing the number of services that do not meet your specific standards. So really neat to integrate these in your daily routines. This is really amazing. Under half an hour, we're able to ingest from PagerDuty. We're able to ingest the on-call, the services, incidents, a bunch of things out of the box. And at the same time, we got the code owners from GitHub. We were able to update the scorecards. So really impressed by what we have here. And again, to do this in Backstage, oh man, it will take me a lot of time. You've seen some of my videos before, and those have taken me upward of 60 hours. And I've only been using the basic packages. I'm excited about our next video in this series, which will explore Port's self-service capabilities in depth. Make sure you check it out when it's ready, and thank you for watching.